things for the last 2 days. But if we take a little bit of a step back and look at the world of technology and look at the world of IT systems, right? These have dramatically evolved over the last 50-60 years, right? Some of us might remember the mainframe era, and then you had the personal computing era, then the internet came along, the whole network computing revolution, and today we are living, the smart computing wave, if you will, the Internet of Things, everything being connected, everything in the physical world kind of living, as a digital avatar up in the cloud somewhere. Everybody is talking about it, right? Now, a very interesting fundamental assumption in all these conversations is the basic belief that as long as you capture data, you can harness all kinds of magical insights from it, and that can help you run a better business, right? Either to understand your customer better, the whole customer segmentation space, to predict what they're going to do next, to improve the customer experience, to streamline your operations, right, add to the bottom line, to figure out ways to monetize those insights and add to the top line. So essentially the assumption is all of that magic is residing in that data. And boy, is there a lot of that data. Omkar is giving some staggering numbers from the connected car industry, right? I'm pretty sure as you look at other verticals, the numbers are equally staggering. So, forget data lake, we're talking data ocean. And like shoals of fish, you have the insights lurking in there, which you want to get to, but how do you go about doing that? And this by no means is an easy task. And, my attempt over the next few minutes is from a practitioner's perspective. I'm going to be a lot less technical than Omkar. It comes naturally, I'm no data scientist. Is to share our learnings from the work that we've done with customers and hopefully leave you guys with insights that you find useful on Monday morning. In this case, I should say Wednesday morning, I guess. Let's keep moving. All right. So what's the big fuss? Why are we talking about data initiatives going wrong? What are the critical success factors, etc.? It's important to make a distinction here. Analytics has been around for a very, very long time. But I'd like to draw out the difference between traditional analytics and the type of analytics that we are talking about, right? To me, the answer is really the difference between answers and insights, okay? Now, let's focus on answers for a second. Now, there are a whole bunch of important questions in any business that are important, right? Who's our most profitable customer? How did we do quarter on quarter, right? Why are our revenues dipping or whatever, right? A whole number of variants. And the answers to these questions are equally critical, and which is where traditional analytic systems come into play. So I will not say this is an easy problem to solve, but largely it is a solved problem. People know how to solve it. We are here talking about the world of advanced analytics, to use that expression. Essentially, we are talking about a probabilistic world, not the world of arithmetic, right? We are talking predictions. All of us have hypotheses of what's going on in our business, but how many of those hypotheses are indeed real? And even more interesting is the unknown. Are there patterns or insights in there that we don't even know about? Those are the types of analytics initiatives that we are talking about here, and these are not easy at all. If you followed the keynote yesterday, the lady from OVM, the principal analyst, put up a nice chart, and it spoke about how one of the biggest impediments to the Internet of Things, people expect that inability to deal with big data, inability to really drive meaningful insights from the big data coming out of IIT is acknowledged as one of the biggest impediments out there, right? Now this, in my opinion, could be the theme of a conference in itself. I'm trying to crunch all of this in 10 minutes and try to do it in a way that does not look flaky, but at the same time, we have to cover everything. So broadly, these 5 buckets: data. Funny enough, data has the answers and data is the problem as well. You either have too little of it or you have too much of it. Availability, quality, all kinds of issues. We'll talk a little bit through that. You need the right workbench, you need the right tools to play with the data, and Mapper is one such example, right? There are tools being created out there that let you do a better job, but what we see businesses struggle is that their tools and technical infrastructure really are equipped for the traditional analytics space. I spoke earlier about answers versus insights, right? So you have technology that supports the answers world, and you're trying to use that to generate insights. That ain't going to be easy. you need to have the right skills. I heard earlier speakers talk about this as well, the gentleman from Google. Mindset, I picked this up from the Google presentation again. A traditional way of approaching a data initiative where you think waterfall, you do planning rigorously, you drop an 18-month plan, you predict what comes out when, is not going to work too well. And we see initiatives fail because, forget the gentleman in technology, the entire organization kind of thinks waterfall, and that is a recipe for failure. Sponsorship, where's the money coming from? I think that's the biggest question in the world of IoT today. There are all kinds of cool, moonshot use cases we can all think of, but who's going to pay for it? Where's the money coming from? And that continues to be an important question. And you're going to find this funny, but we actually find that there are a whole bunch of customers who are so worked up by these aspects that they don't even start, right? Which is perfectly fine in the traditional waterfall type world where, unless you get the project charter perfectly done, unless there is a watertight business case, you don't even start. What you need here is a mindset of exploration and, the ability to get started. So, a lot of these initiatives are dying before they're born, literally. We have had such experiences, right? So let's dive right in. All right. Start with a basic question. What are we really looking for? You'll realize that assume all the data that can ever be collected is collected. Where do you go from there, right? Now, some of us are blessed with fantastic intuition. I'm surely not one of them. Easy question for those guys, right? Some of you in the audience, I'm sure, are that type, and you're lucky. The rest of us have to do some work, okay? Now, the good news is there is a bunch of tools out there that are relatively new that can help you orient yourself. And, a bunch of them, one concept I want to surely talk about because we've really seen that deliver value is the power of visualization. Everybody talks about how a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that is very much true for the world of data as well. Imagine seeing, data in a table or whatever traditional pie charts and whatnot, and try spin that around and use, let's say, visuals like a bubble chart, a word cloud, a scatter plot, a heat map. Try, superimposing information on top of a map and see if that tells you something. A small story I'd like to share. The notion of a word cloud. I don't know how many of you know what a word cloud is, right? So this is where, let's say, you put a paragraph into this word cloud generator and it spits out a word cloud where the size of each word is a function of how often that word occurred in that body, right? We said we were helping this large operator in the UK with a profitability analysis, and the topic was assessing channel partners, right? This company relied on channel partners to drive their business, and traditional wisdom is that the more the revenue the channel partner drives for you, right, they're the better channel partners. So we said, hey, why don't we do this a little differently? We said, let's do a word cloud, right, where actually there are two aspects we can play with. One is the size, right, of the name of the partner. The other is the font. Here's what we said. Let the size denote the kind of revenues the partner is driving for you. Let's use color to tell you how profitable the business that partner generates for you is, right? In other words, the deeper red it is, the less profitable that partner. The deeper black the color, the more profitable the partner. And you will not believe the insights that literally popped out of that word cloud, right? And again, like I said, some people are intuitive, they know this already. But for the rest of us, there are tools like Tableau is one tool that we have extensively used. There are other tools out there as well. So that using tools like visualization and data discovery, you could quickly zone in on areas that you want to explore further. None of these are going to give you ready answers, but surely use your starting point. All right. Let's step through each of these parameters. Data. Like I said, data is the problem and data is the solution. It's almost that Shakespearean saying about water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Just because you have access to so much data does not really mean that you have it all figured out. So we run into issues around granularity in the predictive analytics world. I'm sure all of you have enterprise data warehouses, but typically data warehouses store aggregated data. You will realize that when you are attempting predictive analytics, you want granular data. You want to know what happened on a more real-time basis, okay? And you will run into issues in finding that data. You will potentially run into issues around historical data. Predictive analytics, the more data you provide the models, right? The farther back in time you can go, the stronger the models get, because you have more data available for you to test your models and make sure your predictions are consistent and will work across multiple time horizons. You'll run into all kinds of funny issues. In one case, we found that a customer said they have historical data going back 5 years, but we found out the hard way that the archival process was flawed, and the data that was actually getting archived was incomplete. And the joke about a backup. You find out how good your backup is only when you try restoring it, and invariably you restore it only when you need it. That's exactly what we found there. We find that negative data is not present. Here's what I mean. Our minds, as systems guys, we capture positive transactions, right? Customer walks in, you record the order. Leave aside the world of web analytics where everything you do on a website or on an app gets recorded. But take a physical store, for example. The transactions where somebody walked in, looked around, but did not buy anything, those never get recorded. Okay, and I'll tell you why this is important. So we were trying to work with an operator again, and we were figuring out how we could help them optimize their contact center operations. Okay, and a key input here was to find out the calls that could not be converted. And guess what? It turns out the calls that don't get converted, there is very little information stored because nobody thought it was useful. You only have a record of calls that got converted into an order. So any kind of predictive analytics you're trying to do that tells you maybe what was the reason the customer claimed when they did not accept your product, none of that information is available, right? So these are aspects you kind of want to keep in mind. Another side of the coin is quality. Whatever data is available, is the information there consistent? Is the information there accurate? Is it complete? And here's the amazing thing about data. All of us, all our enterprises, we have fantastic data models where every attribute is modeled, but 75% of these attributes are never used. And that golden rule in data, if nobody is staring at a particular attribute, chances are it has trash inside, and nobody knows it, right? And it is only when you start going through a predictive analytics exercise that you realize that you thought you had everything you needed, but it's full of garbage, and you got to start all over again. So what can you try and do about this, right? So we recommend that you assess the data reasonably thoroughly. And again, there's the risk of analytics paralytics, as one of my friends put it. You cannot keep assessing and not start. You got to make it time bound, but spend some time assessing the data. Always start with a pilot, and Murphy's Law, absolutely plan for contingency. And I absolutely, right? Contingency from a budget standpoint, contingency from a timeline standpoint, because irrespective of what you do, things will trip you up, and you don't want to have to reset expectations at that point. All right, keep going on. The tools that you would provide your data scientists to do the exploration that they need, and very topical. My colleague from MapArt spoke about the kind of utilities that platform offers. Literally, it's an alphabet soup out there, and I must say it's a consultant's dream. Right? Where there is confusion, there is room to offer advice. Truly an A to Z, right? In terms of the number of tools that are available out there. There are 4 or 5 new tools coming out every day. Okay? We kind of think one should go back to the basics. I quote the 3 V's. They tell me there is a 4th V, veracity. There's a 5th V coming next week. We'll stay with the 3 V's. For us, it really boils down to the volumes that you're dealing with, and clearly in an Internet of Things context, you're dealing with very, very large volumes. Also keep growth in mind as you think about volume. Variety, are you dealing with structured data, unstructured data? Is there a multimedia angle? Is there a semantic angle? Semantic is this very very interesting space where you take text and you try and derive natural language meaning from the contents of that text, right? Velocity. So again, in an Internet of Things context, you're dealing with the data streams that you need to play with, so on and so forth. And our recommendation here, it's interesting, right? The way we would develop systems a few years ago, you first created the data model. You identified what the entities were, what the relationships were, and you normalize it. You figure out what the attributes of each entity are, and then around that you start building functionality. We actually think, in this digital world, it should be the other way around. You start with the use case. So what are you trying to do from a predictive analytics perspective, right? And it is a myth that everything has to be real time. What do you do with real time? There are cases where it is perfectly acceptable for you to run a batch process that on a daily basis tells you what you need to do. There are situations where you need real time. There are situations where near real time is good enough, right? You got to think through all of those. And a very interesting notion of polyglot. I'm sure a bunch of you have heard of what polyglot is, right? Polyglot is somebody that can understand multiple languages. We believe that, gone are the days where you had to choose or commit yourself to one platform and then be bound by it and, let it dictate everything that you do, right? We believe that if you have 5 different use cases and they all demand different technologies, one might need a relational database, in one you're okay with Hadoop, in one you need something else, you need a data discovery platform, you need a massively parallel processing platform to, run large ad hoc queries, right? It does not have to be one size fits all, right? It is perfectly acceptable to create an architecture where you have multiple technologies, each playing the role. Obviously, it makes the job of governance a little harder, but we believe increasingly that's what technology's role is, because products are so good these days. Gluing them together and making sure they work consistently really is the job of technology, right? So think polyglot, and I'm using the word validate with a pilot, because we think gone are the days where you have to do a pilot or a POC to verify that the basic technologies work. The tools are fairly mature. But you want to make sure that these are the right tools for your needs, and we suggest a pilot. All right? Moving here. Yeah, thanks, sure. You got to have the right skills in place. I'm going to rush through this a little bit. Data engineering is where you pull the data in, you make sure you ingest data in an acceptable fashion, you store it in an acceptable fashion, you prepare the data so that the data scientists can jump into it and do their thing, right? Very important skill. Largely available, I would say, but a lot of the traditional IT teams that we deal with are not familiar with the new technologies that are available out there. That's something you want to think about. Data science, really the secret sauce from a predictive analytics standpoint. These are the gurus, the gods, right? The brain of the entire operation. These are the guys who can use statistical techniques and help you create prediction models that will drive your insights, right? Now, the funny part is, I'd like to say this, good data scientists are as hard to find as the insights you're looking for. They're far and few between. So you got to think a little creatively, right? The omkars of the world, I'm sure, are not easy to hire. So you got to think creatively. Data science is not new by any means. You had actuaries in insurance, you had weather predictions, you had risk modeling and risk scoring in the financial services industry for the longest time. Of course, they screwed up. Remember 2008, right? So you got to think a little creatively. Business understanding is very key. I'll leave this thought here. It's very easy to confuse, correlation and causality. A classic example is, it was raining yesterday. So, on the opening day of every conference in Dublin, it rains, right? Is that a causal relationship or is that just correlation? Now, there's one school of thought that goes that you let the data do the talking, right? You don't need to know anything about the domain. I kind of beg to disagree there. The common sense we apply in my earlier example is what somebody knowing the business does, right? So they rule out the noise so that you focus on the points. Very, very important. and you cannot hire such people. In my opinion, I understand a lot of people want to make sure the teams that they already have remain productive in the new world. That's a great thought. You should do that. But surely consider hiring new people as well, because some of the mindset, some of the expertise is not something that you can learn and produce overnight, right? Engage with the business, and like I said, stay open to engaging with partners. I'll rush through this. So, from an engagement model standpoint, right? Kind of two different pictures. The one on the left.
I need you to include some guidance, so apologies.
So, I was trying to draw the distinction between, a very well packaged trip and more of a backpacking trip, right? Both of you are, ultimately getting you from A to B, but, in the first case, exactly what you're doing, what airline you're flying, when you land, there's a car that dropped you at the airport. There are some unknowns, but largely planned and predictable. Backpacking trip, you got to pack right, you got to know broadly the weather where you're traveling, you directionally know the terrain, but then you really live it day by day, right? You're more agile. We believe that, as you plan an analytics initiative, really think agile. Enable your teams to operate in an agile mode, don't take it for granted. Be ready for those business moments. There may be insights that pop up when you are not expecting it. Just because it's not in plan, you should not ignore it. All right. You'll have to answer questions from a variety of stakeholders, the CEO, the CFO, the head of IT. They will all have their questions. In our experience, you should really approach this as a change initiative, like Potter's 8-step framework. You really have to go through those steps of, create that sense of urgency, create that vision, build a coalition, people who believe in you, people who support you, sell that vision, somehow generate a quick win and kind of build on it, right? All right. So in conclusion, there's this amazing world of data and insights waiting for you in your enterprises, in your businesses. Well, it's not going to be easy. There are risks. Ultimately you got to jump right in and find your way forward. Bon voyage.